Hello everyone, and welcome to my introduction to ZBrush. You see, I'm all smiles because I wanted to do this for so long, and I'm finally doing it, so I'm super excited. What I want to do in this workshop is bridge, for me, this kind of crucial gap between beginner and intermediate. I want to get you to this level where you feel comfortable in this new environment and can help yourself, can teach yourself like next steps, because I will not be able to teach you everything ZBrush has to offer. There's just simply too much, and I don't know it all. So what we will do is we will create a Krabby, a first generation Pokemon, and we will kind of mix this design of Krabby with what an actual crab looks like. I think this will be super fun. So we will do a sculpt. The sculpt will consist of separate objects. We will also make a very simple paint and rendering. So by the end of it, you will also be able to render all the stuff you did. I think that's very, very important because after a few months, you can look back at all the stuff you've created. I think that's very, very nice because it's good to see your own progress because most people think, I don't know, after a couple of months or half a year, they barely made any progress. But then when they can look back at what they started with, I think that's really, really cool. So just do a quick render, give it a date, and then you can come back to it. I think that's very nice to have. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Let's start with the interface and navigation. So this is what you should see. Maybe also this kind of homepage is also opened up, but we can close that. It's in the upper left-hand corner. Same for the lightbox. The lightbox always opens up and gives you like a couple of projects to start from. But let's close it for now by clicking on this button here or by using the comma key. Okay. So everything ZBrush has to offer is in those palettes. And I think that's the reason why ZBrush is so intimidating, because there's options within options within options, and you make a click and another click, and then more options appear. And the palettes just get longer and longer. But I'll guide you through it. And I think you learn to love the ZBrush interface because it's actually really cool. Okay, so below that, we have like a lot of adjustments for our brushes and how the brush is applied. On the left-hand side, we have all our active tools, brushes, the kind of stroke that's applied, alphas and textures, also materials for our objects and color. We will get into all of this stuff later in more detail. And then on the right-hand side, you already see like the tool palette. It's docked onto the tray. You have this little divider here, like on both sides. If you double click it, it goes away. You can open it up and then you can like drag palettes into here. But now like this tool palette is like very small and you don't see like many options because we haven't opened like any project. So this is why you can't see anything here. We're not doing anything in 3D right now. If I draw now, you see I'm just drawing like a couple of squares. And this is not like really in 3D space. This is 2D or 2.5D, I think. ZBrush even started as a 2.5D program. So this is just what remains. So you can press Ctrl-N to just clear the canvas. And then we can actually load a 3D object into here. So let's do that. Let's open our lightbox by clicking on the lightbox in the left upper hand corner or click comma key. And then there should be under project this demo soldier. And this lightbox, like I said, from here on we can start or have like an object to start from, but there's also like different brushes and textures, alphas, all the stuff that comes with ZBrush is in here. It's like a huge library of ZBrush. So let's click on the demo soldier for now, so I can show you the navigation. Yes, we do not like to change what we've done, and open the demo soldier. Okay, this looks different. So now a lot of stuff happened, right? Now we see in this upper left corner, like the silhouette. And we also have a representation, some kind of 3D gizmo up here to see from what kind of direction we look at our object. I mean, right now, we look at our object from the front, and that's why it's facing the front right here. So let's start with like the most basic navigation tools. This whole area here with this kind of gray little outline is called the canvas. And I like that ZBrush called it that way because ZBrush doesn't feel like any other 3D application I've used so far, because you actually spend like most of your time on this canvas creating stuff. And that's why it feels so liberating to work in it, or to work with ZBrush. And that's what I love about it so much. And when you get into ZBrush, you see like all these palettes and options you have, and you kind of get lost. But I'll guide you through it. And then it becomes very, very powerful. And you do not have to spend much time in the menus and the interface, and can focus on creating. So to rotate around your object, just click on the canvas and drag. So just click somewhere and then drag. When you drag sideways, drag up and down. And if you click and drag and hold Shift while doing it, it kind of snaps into orthographic views. So for example, now I click and drag. Now I'm starting to face the front, right? So I'm pressing Shift and it snaps into the front. I'll move around. Now I see it like from his right side. I press Shift and it snaps. And I also see this representation here at the top that I'm looking at it. Or I'm looking at his right side. Same for the back, bottom, top view. So this is rotation, click and drag, and snap to an orthographic view, click, drag, and hold Shift. Okay, cool. The next thing is how to actually move your camera around. And that's by pressing Alt, then click on the canvas and drag. So Alt, click on the canvas, drag. And we're still holding Alt. Alt, click on the canvas and drag it around. Cool. Now zooming is what most people find like very difficult at first, or like a little weird, which is click on the canvas and hold Alt. No, click Alt, click on the canvas, release Alt, and then drag. Okay, I'll do it again. Hold Alt, click on the canvas, release Alt, and then drag. I'm actually dragging up and down. And for most people, this is kind of weird. But like after a day, it will be okay. And after a week, you don't even think about it anymore. And I actually like this kind of navigation because it's all centered around like Alt and Shift. And I really, really like that because you have Alt and Shift for all kinds of different stuff in ZBrush. And I think it works like really, really well. So I would encourage you to stick with it and do not put it on other buttons. I would highly recommend getting used to it. For me, it was very, very weird at first as well. But I think it's very, very good to have all your navigation centered around a single key. So let's repeat. Click and drag for rotation. Click and drag with Shift to snapping to the orthographic views. Then Alt, click, drag to move it around. Alt, click, Alt, release, drag to zoom. Okay. Should you get into this kind of situation where you moved your object out of the canvas and you can't find it anymore, then just press F and you get, or you have your object centered on the canvas again. Okay. So now we have the navigation figured out. We can have a look at this sidebar here. I will not talk about all of them in detail, but I think some of them are like really, really cool and useful to deal with the tool or the object you're working on. So the button at the very front is rendering. It's called BPR, the best preview render. And if you click on it, we will get some shadows and also some shadow on the floor. So this is how you render your stuff. Later in this introduction, we'll talk about how we make adjustments and how we actually save what we've rendered, but we will get to that later. And this little slider here just controls the sub-pixel anti-aliasing. It sounds really weird. That has to do with render quality. I will not get into too much detail for now because it's more important to get used to navigation and interface and modeling. Okay, so the next buttons here, scroll, zoom. These scrolling and zooming is not actually moving the camera, it's actually zooming into the document. To be honest, I've never used them. You see, when I zoom in, it all gets very pixelated. And when we click on like actual size, it goes back to normal. To be honest, same for like half, which just zooms out a lot. I've never used these buttons, so I won't talk about them. The next one actually is pretty cool. So when I move my object to the left side by like Alt, click, and dragging, you see that now we actually see more of his left side. And if I move him to the right, we see more of his right side. That's because perspective is turned on. If I click on it now, you see what happens? I mean, he's all on the right-hand side of our canvas, but we're still looking at him from the front. I like this when modeling, to really see my object as it is, but it really depends. Maybe you know what kind of camera you have in your program later on, or you want to play with camera settings, then maybe turning on this dynamic perspective from the beginning is really cool, or maybe you just like it more while sculpting. It's personal preference. I won't get into camera details for now. I think that's too much for a start. Below that, we have the floor. So now you can see the floor, and when we render, we have some shadow as well, but we can turn off the floor so we can focus more on our sculpts. For most of my sculpts, I turn off the floor because I simply don't need it. And when we render, we won't have a shadow casted on the floor as well. In earlier versions of ZBrush, the floor was very important to kind of figure out where your axes are and where you are in this environment. But now that we have this gizmo here at the top, I think it's not as important anymore. So like for the most part, I just leave it turned off. The next one is local transformation. And I always leave that on because that's a super cool tool. And I'll show you what it does. So I told you that when you want to zoom in into your object, you press Alt, hold Alt, click, release Alt, and then drag. But now we zoom like right into his crotch, right? What if we want to zoom onto his thumb? So what we can do is just click on the thumb once, then press Alt, click on the canvas, release Alt and drag, and now we're zooming into his thumb. Same for our rotation. When we rotate now, we rotate around his thumb. So we can start modifying it, start sculpting on the thumb, and then moving out, panning it around, zooming in and out, maybe click on the little finger. Now we zoom into the little finger, rotate around the little finger. This is super powerful. I just love it. So if you turn off local, we will always rotate around the center of the object. But with local turned on, we will rotate around the point we've clicked last, or the area we sculpted last. So when I click on his face, now we zoom into his face. And this makes the whole navigation and sculpting in 3D space super easy. I really like that. Okay. The next button is local symmetry. I'll talk about it later. Rotate on all axes. I always leave that turned on. You have like options here to only rotate around the Y or the Z. I don't know what that is for. I always leave XYZ turned on. Okay, I've introduced you to the next button, which is frame, shortcut F. So if you hover over it, you see that there is a shortcut applied to it. So if you just move your object out of the canvas, you press F and you frame your object. So this is really cool. The buttons after that is move, zoom, and rotate. Please, never ever use these buttons. I don't know why they're even there. This is the same, this is like panning, zooming in, and rotation. But I just showed you how to do it, right? With Alt clicking, just Alt and dragging for rotation, and click Alt, click on the canvas, release Alt to zoom. This might be weird at first, but please do not use these buttons. They will take so much time away from you when you sculpt. Same for any 3D application. I think you should never use buttons for navigation. It just slows you down so much. Maybe learning the navigation takes some time at first, sure. But using buttons for navigation will just kill so much time in the future. So please do not use these buttons, because you sculpt, then you go over here, move it, sculpt again, go over here, zoom in a little, sculpt again, then go over here to rotate. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, let's move on. The next button is polyframe, shortcut Shift F. So now we can actually see polygons. What polygons are and why this is important, we get to that later. But this is how we can actually see polygons and polygroups. But like I said, I will introduce you to polygons and polygroups at a later stage. So let's press this button or Shift F to turn it off. So now the next one is transparency. So if we click on that, we can see the object we have actually selected right now. But wait, we haven't selected any object so far. But our demo soldier here, let me turn off transparency again. Our demo soldier consists of a lot of different objects. And if we go into our tool palette, on the left side, there is this subtool. And then we can see that our object actually consists, or our scene has many, many objects in it. Maybe you don't see the tool palette. Maybe for some reason, maybe you clicked here and you can't see it anymore. But like I said, everything ZBrush has to offer is up here. So there is our tool palette. And in order to dock our tool palette to the right, we just click on this icon here. And when we click on this icon again, then it vanishes. Or we can click on the palette we want and then click and drag the palette onto the side. We could also choose to open the divider on the left side and move the tool palette to the left, if that's what you prefer. I just like it on the right side, so just move it over there. You can use this kind of process for all kind of options we have, right? You can grab all the different palettes we have here. But maybe this gets like too much, right? You want to keep it clean, and we won't need like most of these. Let's get rid of it. Why can't I click it on? Okay, now it's good. All right, I've talked a lot, so let me take a sip. All right. So now we've opened our tool palette, we've opened our subtool palette, and we can see that our scene has like many objects in it. So to select an object, of course, we could click in this kind of menu here, but you know I don't like menus. So we click, or we can activate Subtool on our canvas. So all we have to do, surprise, is alt-clicking on it. Brilliant. All centered around the Alt key. I love it. So if we want to select, let's say, his t-shirt, you just press Alt, click on the t-shirt. Magic. And now it's automatically selected. Or like the shoulder pad, just Alt-click on it. And the cool thing is, because we have applied or we clicked on it, we automatically rotate around the shoulder pad. Same for the boots. We can Alt-click on the boots. Now we can sculpt on the boots and also rotate around them. Very, very cool. So there's another way to switch the subtools, and which is like the arrow keys. So you can just press different arrow keys and you see that different tools are highlighted. But I mostly use alt-clicking because it's just easiest way to do, in my opinion. Okay, so now we have this, let's select the t-shirt. Because we can't see much of the t-shirt, right? A lot of stuff is on top of the shirt. So when we press on transparency, we can actually see through it. I don't know why there's a hole, by the way. Why is there a hole? But this is very, very, very cool. The button below transparency is ghost. And this is nice because now you can actually see what kind of subtools belong together. Now we have this kind of harsher lines where each of these objects starts and ends, right? So that's pretty nice to see. But if you want to focus more on your sculpting, then just use the transparency. Or what I use most is the button that comes after, which is solo. So now you just see he has a lot of holes in his t-shirt for some reason. But now you just see this one object. And now you can also use your arrow keys to go through all the subtools. Where's the t-shirt? There's the t-shirt. Okay. There's also this little button here called dynamic. So if we click on it and then rotate around our object, then the solo is applied. I've never used it, to be honest. But maybe it's happening to you and you wonder why. Then this is what happened. You accidentally pressed it here, and now everything is back to normal. So the last button is expose, and you have to be a little careful with that one, because what it does is it shows you like all the different subtools and does this kind of explosion, and now we can still click on them, zoom in, and work on them separately. And now I can show you what local symmetry does. So let's say we click on his body. And I think by default, symmetry sculpting is not activated. If you press X on your keyboard, you see that now I don't have like only like one red dot, but I have two red dots. So everything I will apply to one side will be mirrored to the other side. I know we haven't gotten into like brushes. We will do that in the next chapter. But now I can work in symmetry here. But now this kind of symmetry axis is in the center of this object, right? So if I click on another object, I can still work in symmetry because local symmetry is turned on. It takes the axis of this object to apply the symmetry. If I turn local symmetry off, then go like to this object and then go to that one, you see that it's still working. Why is it still working? I know I turned local off. I want to turn local symmetry off. Yeah, now you see what I'm talking about. Because now you see that when I want to sculpt in symmetry on this object, the symmetry actually sits somewhere here and wants to apply the stroke on the other side as well. So this is not working. But with local symmetry turned on, it will take the axis of my object. That can be beneficial, but for the most part, I work in symmetry and just use the solo button. Like here, if I want to work on this t-shirt, I just use solo or use the transparency mode to work in Symmetry. I rarely use the expose button or move this whole shirt to the side to sculpt on it. But I just want you to understand what it's used for, and maybe using expose and sculpting in local symmetry is something you like. I just wanted you to understand what this feature does. Okay. That was quite a lot. So let's repeat it. If you just click on the canvas, you can rotate. And if you click on the canvas and then press Shift, you kind of lock the view to the orthographic views. If you hold or click Alt and then click on the canvas and drag, you move the camera around. If you press Alt, click on the canvas and release Alt and drag, you zoom. And if you click on objects with the Alt button pressed, you can quickly select different subtools. All right, that was the interface and the navigation. So in the second part, we will get into the first basic brushes and probably also masking and selections. So see you in the next part. Bye. See you soon.